Hey guys, what's going on? I'm back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Intrusion. Intrusion is an American thriller that tells the story of a married couple who move into their new house in a small neighborhood together when their lives are unexpectedly turned upside down after their house is targeted for a home invasion. After surviving the ordeal, the wife Mira and her husband Henry go to the police to give their information regarding the incident, after which the police explain that the burglars of the house are connected to a missing persons case involving a woman who disappeared shortly after the couple had moved into the area, and at the same time Mira begins to suspect that her husband Henry isn't who he seems to be. With all this taken into consideration, Mira decides to undertake an investigation of her own accord as she tries to look for clues that could possibly lead her to the missing woman, while also investigating the reasoning behind her husband's recent behavior at the same time. Based on what I said about this movie thus far, just in the first minute or so of this review alone, you can likely tell exactly where it's going to go story-wise, and chances are, you're probably not wrong. They're not necessarily bad, but this movie's story and characters are about as predictable can be. Mira, who's played by Freida Pinto, is the main character of the story, so she understandably has more depth based on this fact compared to Henry. I like how the filmmakers explored her history with illness, specifically with regards to her battle with cancer, and how the weight and anxiety of being a survivor is constantly weighing down on her, especially as events in the story start to escalate. This being said though, and I'm going to try and be as nice as possible when I say this, I didn't think Freida Pinto's acting was the best in this movie. I'm sorry, but anytime there was a scene that happened on screen that was supposed to be tense in nature, she just never seemed to have the right emotion for it. Like, have you ever caught someone doing something they weren't supposed to be doing and then they turn around to face you and they know deep down that they got caught, but then they start stammering with their mouth and saying things like, "Oh no, I didn't do anything, honest, I'm innocent, really." That exact same thing happens in this movie at least 3 times with Mira, and it got more annoying with each time it happened. Henry, who's played by Logan Marshall Green, is a bit better in the acting department. He has a real sinister presence on screen that keeps you guessing as to what his motives are, or if he even has any motives in the first place. Unfortunately, unlike Mira, Henry doesn't have much going on for him personality-wise. All we know about him is that he's an architect and he designed the house that he and Mira live in. Other than that, that's it. There's nothing else that's notable about him as a character. So there's a bit of a trade-off between the two characters in the sense that you got one character who's weaker in presence but stronger in backstory, and then you got another character who's stronger in presence but a bit weaker in backstory. So it's nice that the two balance each other out, but at the same time, I felt like the filmmakers could have done more with each character. At the end of the day though, above all else, this movie is supposed to be a thriller, and a thriller's purpose is to keep its audience in suspense. I do think there are some suspenseful moments involved with this movie's story, but their overall execution to me is a bit iffy. The investigation that Mira takes part in the movie is interesting enough. She does find plenty of clues that point her in the right direction, as well as experiencing setbacks that throw her off a bit, and it is interesting to see her trying to overcome these setbacks and bring herself back on track. But for every clue that Mira finds, which raises the stakes of the story as she goes along, there's a weird interaction between her and some of the townspeople where she lives that really drags down the whole experience. Like, for example, when she's confronted by some trailer park scum who comes across as the most typical poor guy who hates rich people. It was so cringeworthy when he confronted her in that scene. There's also some sort of angle going on between Mira and the cops, and that was something I found to be really weird, how the cops were portrayed. I thought they were going to end up being antagonists of sorts based on how they were portrayed on screen, or at least be important to the story at hand somehow, but they only appear in like 2 or 3 scenes, and then after that they disappear for the rest of the movie. I was like, what was the point of even having them there? Beyond this, apart from the investigation that plays out throughout the movie, there's just not a whole lot of interesting things going on in its story. The movie flows at a snail's pace, so unless you're paying close attention to what's happening on screen, sooner or later you're going to miss out on important details that are happening in the story because you're going to be bored to tears waiting for something to happen. And that's not to say that there aren't any interesting things that happen in this movie. There are some fun things like the chase sequences spread throughout, and of course the big finale at the end, while a bit stereotypical in its presentation, does ramp up the violence factor quite a bit, so that part is enjoyable. But chances are, unless you have the patience of a saint, you're going to have turned this movie off long before any of those things happen. For me, the slowness didn't bother me all that much. I actually thought that its story was short and concise to the point that it didn't overstay its welcome, although I can definitely see the average viewer disagreeing on that front. Rather, my biggest problem that I have with this movie concerns all the plot threads that it has that go nowhere. There's a dogfighting news story that's talked about on TV at a certain point in the movie when Mira's investigation is well underway, and it has no relevance to anything that is going on in the movie. I don't know, maybe someone else can explain in the comments below, but in my opinion, that scene was completely pointless. I also take issue with the way this movie's ending is handled, based on how poorly explained the characters' actions are at that point in the story. I'm not going to spoil the ending for the sake of this review, but let's just say it left me with more questions than answers. Even though this movie's story left me unfulfilled, I can't deny that it's still well made on a technical level. The editing is tightly paced, the lighting is appropriately moody, and the cinematography is well done, although at times it can be a little bit exaggerated, as it tends to show these rotating shots of people just walking from point A to point B, and I never understood why they were there. Overall, Intrusion is another average but watchable thriller. Out of all the thrillers that I've seen on Netflix this year, this one is definitely the most mediocre yet. Mediocre doesn't mean bad though. I think if you enjoy thrillers and you can handle the slow pacing within this one, I suppose you might be able to enjoy watching this movie to a certain extent. There is a lot of potential to be found in this movie. It is fun and thrilling where it counts the most, and it is technically well made, but its imbalanced characters and slow pacing end up making it a mixed bag for me. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Intrusion. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Brazilian comedy Confessions of an Invisible Girl. Bye-bye!